So you have an idea for a book and you don't know where to start. Howdy y'all, my name is Anna with Always Write, and in today's video, I'm gonna cover novel writing or writing a book 101. So my background in writing is that I wrote fan fiction for about 6 to 8 years of my life, and I piddled with the idea and the thought of being a writer, being an author, and then this year I decided I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna write a book, and so I did. In my opinion, there's only 5 basic steps, I say with a very evil laugh. So let's get into writing a book 101. So the first step is you have an idea. Now what you need to do is you need to do a little bit of research and see if anyone has already written the book that you're thinking of writing. If you sat down one night and you were just staring at your fireplace and you thought to yourself, what if I wrote about this little orphan boy that got accepted into a wizarding boarding school and he didn't know he was a wizard, but all of a sudden he is? I have some really bad news. That's been written. You need to do the research and see if someone has already written your idea. One thing that pops up on r/writing every month, there is a post from someone complaining and asking for advice on what to do when they started writing their book idea. They found out after spending hours pre-writing and writing their book that it had already been done. And the solution is research your book before you start on it. What do you do if your book has already been written? You need to either do a drastic spin on it. Instead of it being an orphan boy going to wizarding school, it can be a rambunctious youth that discovers he's a wizard and just plays a lot of pranks on people. You still get to keep kind of your character idea, you still get to keep the magic aspect, but writing about a wizarding boarding school, probably not a great idea. Or you can just try to think of a totally different idea. And I know that may sound kind of daunting, and for new authors, new writers, it is. As you're writing one book, you'll have more ideas pop into your head. And as a side note, if you start writing a book and you're kind of bored, you get 5,000, 10,000 words into it, and you come up with another idea that's so much more fun sounding, don't go chasing it, because you will never get a book written if you do that. Start a book, finish a book. Unless you absolutely hate that book, then decide, not for me. Once you've done your due diligence and you know that your book idea is unique, or at least unique enough where you can make it your own, you can go to step 2 of my simple 5-step program. Is you need to develop that idea. You need to develop your book idea so that you have an outline for your book and characters. It doesn't matter which order you do. It doesn't matter if you create the characters first and then do the outline, or you do the outline saying main character, you know, does this. Side character does this. Romantic interest does this. That's okay. Also, if this is your first book, first time writing anything, you are going to learn very quickly whether you are an outliner or what's called a pantser. Now, an outliner is a planner. They go through their entire book and they know exactly what's happening, when it's happening, and they write down all the steps, all the chapters. They go in depth on their chapters, not just like, oh, this is the chapter where they meet. I mean, you can, if that's just a chapter you're not too thrilled about, you can. But outliners are the ones that have to know everything that's going on. The other side is pantsers, aka discovery writers. Discovery writers are the ones that will have fun with the characters, and then they get to the outlining phase of the book and they go, oh, why? The thing is you have to know in your book when, where, and why it's starting. Then you kind of need a little post swinging in the wind going, here, come to here, write to me, for the middle of your book. That way you'll know what you need to write towards. And then you most definitely need to have at least some idea on what your ending is. If you start writing a book and there's literally no end in sight, it's gonna be painful. Like, it's very hard to discovery write and then come up with an end that's not just like a when you reread it. And then there's a third hidden category of writers that I didn't mention earlier. That is Plansters. It's planners and pantsters combined. I'm one of those. They're my favorite kind of authors because I'm one of them, so I'm a little biased. But Plansters are the ones that like to write down the beats of their story. If you're sitting here going, what the hell is a beat? What are you talking about? What are plot beats? There's a book I highly suggest you looking into, and it is Save the Cat Writes a Novel. This gives you a very fun, very easy to follow kind of formula. I highly suggest this book. This book has been out long enough that you can buy it pretty cheap used on Amazon, or you can probably find it, if you're lucky, in like a used bookstore or somewhere like that. This is a great option for you to look into, especially for your first book. Plansters are the hybrid. They like to outline, but they also like to fill in the gaps. What step 2 basically involves with the outlining and the characters is what's called pre-writing. It's you preparing yourself to write. Pre-writing should not take that long, if I'm being honest with you. If you find yourself getting caught up in the outline, if you feel your creativity just shriveling up and you just don't want anything to do with the book anymore, ease up on the outlining. That means you're probably a pantser. And the way to tell if you're an outliner is if you start writing your book and you just don't really know where to go with it, you don't feel really comfortable just kind of, writing on the fly, then you're probably more of an outliner. That's the easiest way to tell. Most new writers fall closer to the pantser spectrum. I find that outliners are usually the more established, the more kind of serial fiction writers, or the really intense, like George R.R. Martin, kind of writers that do very involved storytelling. Now, step 3. Step 3 is pretty easy. We're still easing into it. Let's talk about the tools you'll need to start writing. You basically have 2 options. You can handwrite your book in journals, notepads, whatever, or you can enter it into a word processing program such as Microsoft Word or Scrivener. I was using Microsoft Word for a while and it started to struggle around the 60-page mark. So I bought Scrivener. Scrivener is about $40. I highly suggest it. You should be able to get a 10-day free trial, so you can try that out, watch some videos on YouTube where people actually show you how to use it and talk about using it. Step 4. The largest and the most daunting step, writing your book. So in step 4, there's a lot that goes into it, but one thing you need to do is you need to set up a schedule, a habit, and establish a deadline. There's the old saying, write every day, that'll make you a writer, you'll get a book done that way. That's not wrong. That is not wrong at all. However, sometimes you can't write every day. But you have to set up a schedule. You have to make writing a habit. You can't give yourself the excuse of, I just don't have time to write. The way that I was able to write and write as much as I did is I basically stopped playing video games. Like, that is my secret to how I was able to spend 2 to 3 hours a day writing, is I cut video games out of my life. I reduced the amount of time I spent on my computer. You can reduce your TV time, your YouTube time after this video. But to write, you have to make sacrifices usually. There's a few people that have that free time where they're like, okay, done, I can do that. But if you find yourself thinking, man, I just don't have time in my day to write, get off your phone, get off social media, get off the TV, or get off the couch, go write. And you usually want to write around the same time every day, or every day that you're writing. You can also create this habit, like cement it in your brain by doing food cues, scent cues, burning a certain candle, doing something like that. Musical cues, or where you listen to a song every time before you sit down and write. Really, do whatever you have to write. Also, don't try to become a morning person because people are telling you that you should write in the morning. Don't become a night owl if you're not a night owl. If people tell you you should write at night, just find a time that's comfortable for you, that works with your schedule, and write. I mean, at the beginning, you'll probably need to set an alarm on your phone. Yeah, writing is a very time-intensive hobby. It's not passive. You can't just leave your laptop open and wake up the next morning and go, look, I have a chapter done. And you didn't write that chapter, because that's not how writing works. If you want to see progress, you have to make progress. And it'll be hard. It'll be so hard when you first start writing. Trust me, you'll look at the page and you'll go, I have no idea what I should write. I have no idea what I should do. Keep writing. Just write. And while you're writing, don't look back at what you've written. And I mean this in a way that don't go back and edit what you've written. That is the easiest way to unnerve yourself. And for most people, it is the number one reason why they never finish a draft, is because they look back at what they've done and they go, oh, this is garbage. I thought it smelled in here. It's my writing. No, you're okay. At the time of drafting, your writing will look like garbage. It'll look terrible. However, when you go back through and edit your work, you will find that it's not all terrible. You'll probably end up using more from the first draft than you think you will. The first draft is never the final draft. Remember that. If you want to get a literary agent, you should always aim for writing a 70,000 to an 85,000 word book. There are a few exceptions in this, in like the fantasy realm, the adult fantasy and the adult sci-fi realms. Those can get a little chunkier. However, literary agents don't really like signing big books because they're hard to sell. So keep that in mind when you're writing your book, to aim for 70,000 to 85,000 words. That's kind of like the sweet spot. If you're writing less than 70,000, you need to beef it up a little more. You need another subplot, or your idea wasn't big enough for a book. And if you're writing over that, then you're overwriting, period. You have too much going on. Your book should maybe be 2-3 books. Depends on how much you overwrite. For the deadline portion, if you don't set a deadline, there's no real pressure or reason for you to finish this book. You'll give yourself an out every single time you don't want to write if you don't have a deadline looming over you. One example of a deadline is, I'm gonna write my book by the end of the year. I'm gonna write my book in 6 months. That's very achievable. And then you're gonna want to look at how many words you think you're gonna write for this book. Remember, try to aim for 70 to 85,000 and outline. Outline it well. Outline it so that you have an idea of what all is gonna happen in that book, so you can make an educated guess on your word count. And then whatever time frame you would set as your goal, as your deadline, divide that up into smaller chunks. Because sitting down and writing, especially at the beginning, when you see that you are trying to hit 88,000 words, you're just gonna look at it and go, am I? Am I really? Like, I don't think so. You need to break it down into more digestible chunks. For example, I set a goal in June of writing 20,000 words. That made it pretty easy on me, where I could just write 700 words a day and I would be able to achieve my 20,000 words in that month. This is one thing that I did that I've learned recently that's pretty helpful. I set a daily goal of 700 words and I kept track of it on my calendar. This is a $3 Target calendar. Having physical documentation or physical proof kind of keeps you accountable to your goal. I would give myself a star for every 700 words I wrote. As you can see, there are some days that I did really, really well, and there's some days that I didn't do well. Set monthly milestones for you, and then break that down into kind of a daily basis, and you got it. If you want to write a 75,000 word book, and you can only really write 500 words a day, that will take you less than half a year to get it done. So just be kind to yourself. And that leads into my 5th step for writing a book, and that's treat yourself nicely. Writing a book is a crazy, daunting, big task. It is hard. Most days, you won't want to write. You won't have motivation. All days, you have to write. It doesn't matter if you have that motivation, you have to write. And that's why I've included setting up a routine, creating a habit. It's because if you're in the habit of writing and you're not really motivated that day, not really feeling it, you'll still be able to get words on the page. And that's really what counts. Because any progress is progress towards your book. And you need to celebrate the little victories. If you meet your monthly goal a little early, celebrate. Give yourself a pat on the back. Give yourself a treat. Just remember that you're human and writing gets easier the more you do it. There's a reason that my days started out really pathetic, where I was skipping some or barely doing any words, and then I was able to kind of ramp it up so that I was able to finish it. This is my last week in writing. I was able to finish my book in 7 weeks, basically. Make it easier on yourself by setting achievable goals and don't have terribly high expectations for yourself. After all, there is no such thing as a perfect first draft. So don't try to compare yourself to published authors. That book that you're reading, that book that you see on the shelf, is not their first draft. They have edited it, their literary agent has edited it, and then their publishing house has edited it. That's at least 3 rounds of edits for one book. Thank you all so much for watching. I post writing and editing vlogs on Tuesdays and AuthorTube inspirational / writing advice videos on Fridays. So feel free to subscribe, like the video, and as always, let's get writing. Bye!